Hey y'all, and welcome to Politbrawl. My name is Brian, and this is how Donald Trump dealt with Iran when it tried to bully the United States and our allies. This is exactly how a world leader, particularly an American leader, needs to act. But before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors at NativePath, whose products, particularly their collagen peptides, can help you live a healthier lifestyle. But more on that later. Now, let's get back into the video.
The United States does not seek conflict with any other nation. We desire peace, cooperation, and mutual gain with all. But I will never fail to defend America's interests. One of the greatest security threats facing peace-loving nations today is the repressive regime in Iran. The regime's record of death and destruction is well known to us all. Not only is Iran the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism, but Iran's leaders are fueling the tragic wars in both Syria and Yemen. At the same time, the regime is squandering the nation's wealth and future in a fanatical quest for nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them. We must never allow this to happen. To stop Iran's path to nuclear weapons and missiles, I withdrew the United States from the terrible Iran nuclear deal, which has very little time remaining, did not allow inspection of important sites, and did not cover ballistic missiles. Following our withdrawal, we have implemented severe economic sanctions on the country. Hoping to free itself from sanctions, the regime has escalated its violent and unprovoked aggression. In response to Iran's recent attack on Saudi Arabian oil facilities, we just imposed the highest level of sanctions on Iran's central bank and sovereign wealth fund. For 40 years, the world has listened to Iran's rulers as they lash out at everyone else for the problems they alone have created. They conduct ritual chants of death to America and traffic in monstrous anti-Semitism. Last year, the country's supreme leader stated Israel is a malignant, cancerous tumor that has to be removed and eradicated. It is possible, and it will happen. America will never tolerate such anti-Semitic hate. Fanatics have long used hatred of Israel to distract from their own failures. Thankfully, there is a growing recognition in the wider Middle East that the countries of the region share common interests in battling extremism and unleashing economic opportunity. That is why it is so important to have full, normalized relations between Israel and its neighbors. Only a relationship built on common interests, mutual respect, and religious tolerance can forge a better future. Iran's citizens deserve a government that cares about reducing poverty, ending corruption, and increasing jobs, not stealing their money to fund and massacre abroad and at home. After 4 decades of failure, it is time for Iran's leaders to step forward and to stop threatening other countries and focus on building up their own country.
While he ain't exactly Cicero, Trump is 100% right. And maybe he should start ending his speeches with and I believe Carthage must be destroyed. I think something similar needs to be said here about the regime in Iran. What the Ayatollah has done to Iran, he took a nation that was coming into the new world. A nation that was thriving off of the British Petroleum Oil Company and was, again, managing at a fairly functional level. And then out of the blue, they decided that the Shah was no longer the guy that they wanted in charge. Let's get this Ayatollah guy. Oh, and by the way, let's bring in some communists from Russia to help us out here. What happened? Ultimately, the Ayatollah then took one look at the communists and said, by the way, let's remove their heads from their necks. And thus, the Ayatollah created a deeply disturbing religious regime in the state of Iran. Now, granted, if you were to look at Iran on a map and notice that the mountains, the swamps, in my opinion, I love the United States geography, but Iran has some of the toughest geography in the world. Iran, Afghanistan, and Vietnam have the toughest geographies in the world, in my opinion. More than Russia, more than the United States, and definitely more than Canada. And why is this important? Well, again, the mountains run parallel, and these mountain ranges reach like 12,000 feet in height, and the valley floors are only about 4,000. So there's this huge valley system that you cannot cross. You have to go all the way around and wait for the mountains to literally end in order to reach these valleys. This makes controlling Iran incredibly difficult, because if someone wants to do something different than what they're doing in Tehran, it's going to take a while for that kind of response. So there's a reason why Persia is rarely ever conquered, unless you are Alexander the Great or the Mongols. Hey y'all, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our new sponsors, NativePath. Created by Dr. Chad out of Austin, Texas, he realized that there was something deeply wrong in this medical community. Instead of focusing on nutrition, they were just focused on serving Big Pharma. So he left and created this new company called NativePath. And what do they do over there? They sell something called collagen. Now, what is collagen? Well, it's not magic fairy dust. It's not this muscle milk. It's not calcium rich. Instead, it is an odorless, flavorless, dissolves completely in water powder that you can mix. And unlike iocane powder, this stuff has massive health benefits. It can help your bones, your joints, your ligaments, your skin, your hair follicles, even your fingernails. This stuff is absolutely packed with the nutrients that we lose so constantly in our modern diet. This stuff is a fantastic supplement, can help you live a healthier life. And if you go to this link down here below, you will find up to 45% off of certain products. That is how much NativePath cares about your health. So go check them out, link in the description below. And now, back to regularly scheduled programming. And ultimately, what ends up happening when you have this tough geography, when you are Shia Muslim surrounded by Sunni Muslim nations, the majority of the world's Shia Muslims live in Iran. So you're surrounded on all sides. You have an oppressive regime, and you have a ton of oil. Yeah, in essence, you are going to get a country that is just paranoid. Unless, of course, you have a pro-Western leader who realizes that, hey, it's better to work with the West than against the West. Funny, it used to work for a while, and I wonder what could have possibly changed all that. What ideology could do that? But you know what? I'm not going to point fingers. Ultimately, Iran, because of their weird decisions, because of their geography, and because all that forces a very tough regime, it has created a world in which the entire world hates Iran. All right? Their fellow Muslim nations hate Iran and are terrified of it. And ultimately, there is some good news on that front. I don't think we're ever going to have a war with Iran unless Iran starts something, and they're close to doing so. Because of Joe Biden's terrible policies, he basically freed up a whole, just millions of dollars to the Iranian nation. They turned that money into weapons, sent them to Hamas and Hezbollah, and all of a sudden there's this war that happens out of the blue. Funny how that happens. Maybe algebra is something we need to learn. 2 plus x equals 4. Solve for x. X is, well, Biden gave them a bunch of money. All of a sudden there's a whole bunch of new weapons that Hamas and Hezbollah have used. There's a reason Iran is the #1 sponsor of state terrorism. But ultimately, this is a portrait of two presidents. You have Joe Biden, who's trying the Barack Obama playbook, which did not work. And then you have the Donald Trump coming in saying, your playbook sucks, let's change it. It's like an offensive coordinator. It's like going from Steve Sarkisian as an offensive coordinator to Kyle Shanahan. All right, being a Falcons fan, I can make that comparison. Donald Trump has brought a completely different playbook to Washington, and it worked, and they hated him for it. He doesn't need to be an eloquent speech maker, but he got his point across here to the UN. And that message is simple. Iran needs to come into the fold. Iran needs to just put down its weapons and admit, hey, we've been crazy, we don't need to do this anymore, we're tired of the fighting, we're stepping down. And it's possible that it's happening. Iran is facing a young people crisis, and on two fronts. Front number one, there aren't as many kids to replace the adults. And two, the kids do not like this version of Islam. Maybe they're starting to reject the religion entirety, which is a huge problem for the regime. So it's possible. There is hope for Iran. But until they realize that they might be the reason for all this hostility, until they come to that conclusion and step down, we're going to have this continued tension until eventually it either breaks and something terrible happens, or they surrender. And I hope it's the latter. And I hope it happens soon. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politbrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.